All right. Hi, guys. We're back again. Mahogany Honey here, podcast, your favorite host, Alexei Senya, and I have my guest speaker today, Jasmin Stewart.
Hello.
Yes, guys. Jasmin is a dear friend of mine. We met back at grad school. Those were the days, huh, Jasmin?
Definitely. But look at the long-lasting friendship. Like, I can't believe it's been like almost 7 years since grad school started.
Absolutely. Definitely a journey I keep dear to my heart and has been part of my life every day. I am excited to have you here, not just for personal reasons, but also because I know that you are a wealth of knowledge and you just have so much to share, especially being in higher ed and your involvement now for almost 10 years working with international students. I know that's like your passion.
Oh, I'm definitely passionate about it. Living your purpose is what I always say.
Yes. So Jasmin, you guys, is an international educational professional and has been in the field, like I said previously, for 10 years. And right now she is a student service director in the Bay, Avery Bay, in the Bay Area, California. And so, Jasmin, give us a little bit more spiel, girl. Give us a little bit more spiel on your back.
Yes. I would love to do a rundown because I do feel like I have like a non-traditional path. I feel like, especially working in international education, I don't see a lot of people that look like me, even though it's supposed to be a diverse field. And this all started way back in my undergrad years. I went to the University of Missouri, Columbia, and I did my undergraduate degree in human development and family studies. So pretty much for those who don't know what that is, it's like you learn all the different segments of a person's life. You have a class about it. So whether it be marriage and family therapy, children in poverty, multicultural families, like I literally had a class over every segment. So most people go on to do like therapy, but for me, I wanted to work with people, but not in that capacity. So mixed with me having like these undergraduate experience studying abroad, where I went to Costa Rica for a semester, I went to Ghana. So in these experiences, I was like, oh, I really love working with people. I really love advising, but maybe I should do it in a different way. So after I came back, I was one of the first students to do that in my department in HDFS. And so my faculty member was just telling me like, hey, girl, like try to get our other students to do this. This is a great experience and we want visibility for our college here. So once I started doing that, I realized I love working with students. I love promoting these, international experiences. And so I was just like, okay, I think I'm on to something. And then that's when my faculty advisor was like, Jasmin, you do realize higher education is a major. And I was like, it's a what now? It's a what? It's a major. So that's how I ended up in Florida. So that's where me and Alexa like met for grad school, because we went to Florida International University and I got my master's degree in higher education leadership. And while I was there, I was the graduate assistant turned research assistant for the Center for the Advancement of Teaching. And they really gave me my love for teaching and really looking at the different like pedagogy to talk about like what's the best things for students, and as educators, how can we better serve them? Because the biggest thing is like, it doesn't matter if they're at the university, if they're not utilizing the services, and if we're not doing the best for what they need. So while I was there, I was a part of this great initiative where we were looking at the gateway classes that were keeping particularly like minority students from retaining on, and we figured out like it had to do with like the chemistry class and these general math classes. Those things where people felt like I can't do this, they literally were not just stopping, they were dropping out. So my department was a part of that like course redevelopment, where we revamped a lot of these courses, start doing these facilitation groups with professors, because the thought was like your intellectual minds, have representatives from your department come in, we'll teach you all the things for your department, and then go forth and spread the good word. But essentially it really worked, because like after we did like studies and tests, we started to see like an improvement with retention, and we started to see like this math lab that we created because of our studies. It was being utilized like almost like immediately, and people were increasing the grades almost tenfold. So that brings me to where we are current day. So after I left Florida, I started working for this international education company that partners with universities across the nation. And I started off at a university in the South, but when I got promoted, I moved out here in the Bay Area. So now I'm a California transplant, living my best life in San Francisco, everybody. So that's a long spiel about me, but that's how I got here. And I just want to talk a little bit more about the things that I've learned along the way.
Yes. So we're happy to have you on here, especially, after all the time that we've have had quarantining.
Yes.
We've had some time to self-reflect, and this topic about just education, higher ed, and just tackling our times in 2020, dealing with public health as an issue, and even racism in a whole, and seeing how we're going to navigate those spaces now that we're going back to school, right?
Okay.
So part of my Take a Seat series, because that's what I call this series, is just, again, going back and really reflecting on the reality of the oppressive burnout from this president.
Yes.
And how the working class and minorities have been affected. So pretty much, what are we looking forward to in the upcoming season to further explore as a nation? And harping on the Department of Education, I've been pretty much pulling my blinds, pulling my screen down, and trying to put the microscope on the Secretary of Education, Betsy DeVos, because you know how I love to take the top-down approach, since she essentially is the person who facilitates our federal funds and research for educational policies. And pretty much how we can get involved by knowing who sits on your local, let's say, board, even if it's part of the higher ed committee, and just becoming an official. Tell me if you want to speak a little bit on, which I do want to discuss, how do you feel about Betsy DeVos in general, and just like the federal funding and all of that?
Oh, wow. I feel like there's a lot to say. So before I even get started, I would like to say that these are my own thoughts and feelings, and they have nothing to do with who I work for. So I'm just going to put that interjection in there. But I do want to speak from my own lived experience and from my experience as a Black woman. During this time of COVID, I've definitely been reflecting on what do I want to do moving forward. And one of those things is like, as an educator, of course, we want to continue to learn and grow. And so I've been looking forward to starting a PhD program. So in the middle of me looking into writing my statement of purpose, I was looking at what do I see for myself next and what do I want? And I'm really big on policy. And one of the things I looked to was who is at the top of educational policy and who is the one who is shaping all those like different things. And so it's Betsy DeVos. So I looked into her and her background, and I was just like underwhelmed. Here I am applying for this PhD program, concerned if I have the qualifications to be admitted to this and to the program, and if I have the qualifications that's going to make it where I'm a good educational policy analyst. Literally, this person who is like the Secretary of Education, when I started to look more into her story and what she's about, I started to see, like, if you really look at the fine print, she's never really had an educational job, because like if you look, there's like, she's fostered relationship with students for 10 years. Fostered what relationship? Fostered what mentorship? Anybody can be a big brother and big sister. Like, you can pour into your community. That doesn't mean like that it's work. And then just to see that she's in this leadership role working for the public education sector, when you don't even believe about putting your own children in the public education system, I think that there's a point of like, there's a dissonance between what you believe and your actions. And it gave me question for pause of like, what did you do to be in this position? And it goes to, a lot of times women of color, people of color are often not represented in the education system when people are in the room making decisions for us, but don't relate to us and don't have the perspective that we have to try to do policies and things that are going to help us. And I think that that's really sad, especially in the admission process with colleges, whether it has to do with standardized testing, because like that's biased inherently, and just things like that. So my first thing with her is just like your background. Those who do the work do the learning, and I feel like too many times people want the promotion without the process. That's why when she did this recent news clip, they were asking her, what is your plans to bring our students back here safely? And she couldn't really give you an answer. It's because you don't have, not that you don't have the aptitude, you don't have the experience with leadership crisis to pull from. So at this point, I try not to be biased. I try not to insert myself in to be objective. But I think when you're thinking about our education, and everybody loves education, you're in school, that's so great. Everyone loves it. But like, who are you really having facilitate this whole industry? And it shouldn't be people who can pull out their purse and control the dollars. Because essentially, she worked with George Bush and was like on some of his campaign helping him fundraise. A person who can go around and collecting the coins is not the same person who should be writing the policies. And that's how I feel about it.
Scary, scary times. And that brings me into student loan forgiveness. I mean, what are we looking at?
So the interesting thing about student loan forgiveness is like, we are as a country, of course, we know we're capitalists. So we're really into credit worthiness. We're like really into like making sure that you have the credentials to get said loans. I think it's very interesting that an 18-year-old kid whose frontal lobe technically is not developed can go to school and take out $40,000 to $50,000, no questions asked, with the expectation that they're going to pay it back with interest. It feels very predatory, because you couldn't go to the bank and get that without a credit history and established job. You couldn't go to the bank to get like a car or a home or anything of that nature. So I think it's very problematic to have this available to these students without the proper like conversations. Because as I was pulling out loans, of course, I'm not saying that people shouldn't do it, because I'm not loan averse. I took out loans. But my thing is like, why didn't I get loan counseling to the end? It's called your exit counseling. Well, now that you pulled out all this money, this is how you need to pay me back. How about you tell me that at the beginning, so we can make informed and educated decisions? So the biggest thing for me is just like, I want students, whether it be like people in my family or students that I work with, I want them to make informed and educated decisions. And we need to be like changing the curriculum, like maybe perhaps in the secondary sector, 10th graders, 11th graders, they need to be having like, maybe if it's workshops, maybe if these conversations, but I think we need yes, we need to have like someone speaking to them, and it needs to be consistent. Because I will say that I went to a school and it was really good. Everyone had to talk to, we had assigned college counselors, and they were very helpful. But I was in a school district where the plan was your parents were going to pay for it. So there was no talking about financial literacy, because it's just like, your parents pay it. Like, what are you talking about? Or it was on the other end of the spectrum of like, you had to be poor and desolate. It's like either you're really rich or you're really poor. And it's just like, where do you find like the middle class people where it's just like, well, you know, I'm not on my last leg and my mom does feed me and we got a house, but we're not rich, but I'm not in a shack. It's just like the people who find themselves in the middle, it's very tough. And we need to like speak to that more. I don't know, girl, help me, help us.
I feel like you just gave these people, I was that kid in the middle. You just aired out my laundry, Jasmin. I don't live in but I got food on the table.
So it's very confusing. I do feel like I just don't want to just identify myself, but I feel like people who identify as being middle class, I feel like that is a group that's constantly being left out. Because like, of course you can get merit-based scholarships, but you know, for those like financial based ones, it's just like sorry, your mom made a little too much money. You got it. And so it's just like, I have 5 sisters. Like, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
All of us are in college. So mind you, plot twist, I went to at least one of my university experiences, 3 of my siblings all in school, all at the same time. That was fun.
Oh my goodness. But yeah, let's bring us back to looking at the top-down approach and what are the expectations and the accountability of either educators, parents, students, and how we are left to do work. And now more than ever, asking those in positions of power to take accountability and to step up. And so
I have lots to say to that.
Yeah. I mean, for as a parent, what would you advise or be coming in as a student?
As a parent coming in, I have lots of different things. Like, for example, my sibling is 13 and my mom, she's a bit older. Let's not say old, let's just say she's seasoned. So now with everything going remote, there's a lot of paperwork that she needs to fill out. There's a lot of things that are done online. And my mom, of course she can do it, but if I can help, I will. So this past week, there was like a packet of things that we needed to fill out. And it was just like 4 different things in 4 different places. And the directions were very confusing. And I'm trying to fill this out for my mom. And because of my background, we're working with LMSs and all this different type of stuff, I was able to navigate it and figure it out. But I really did have to take my time. So I think for parents who have students, whether in secondary or whether they're going off to college, I think you can't wing it. This is not something that you just have to consider just like one time. You really are going to have to be very intentional and really look at your students' educational projection. Where do you want them to go, and where you fit in is the support. So whether it be taking a whole day, an hour, like you need to sit down and be reviewing all this content, because I was even finding within the packet, it had stuff sprinkled in about health. Like if we have a flu clinic, you give authorization for my sister to get a flu shot. No, she can't get a flu shot. If something happens, you give permission for her to, wait. So literally these papers were giving away permission. It even said like, during the academic school year of X, Y, and Z, you give permission for your student to go to any field trip that's according to the, so you can take my child somewhere and like, I think in the off chance that they forget a, permission slip, I get it. But what if I don't want them to go somewhere? Technically, I signed or my mom signed off for them to do that if you're not looking through in detail for it. So I think that as we move forward, I think that parents have to be intentional and take the time to really look at what your school is offering and what they're not offering. Because I'm also looking at, for those who live in certain neighborhoods, is your school offering laptops, access to internet? What are they doing? Because I don't think it's appropriate to expect parents to have their students be remote, but not to provide the support that they need. So, and to that same point, when I go to have children, I know that I'm going to have them at a private school. And I don't think that a private school should be so elitist that you don't allow other students to go there. So I'm also going to be looking for, how do you cater to students who might be here on an academic scholarship? I want to see that you're working for those students' greater good as well, because the things that you don't provide also shows me where you stand. And I don't need somebody to show like performance allyship. I need for you to really be, your actions and your words need to align. And I need to see that. So.
Let me know where you signed yours up. Slide them in.
Seriously. And I guess, okay, one thing I did want to bring up, as far as like higher education, as far as parents go, some of these schools are just diploma mills. Really, we're the best, we're top ranked. Look who they say they're top ranked by. Because sometimes I feel like they have these application fees that are just high and they're just looking to have students apply and get that money. Some of them, I feel like the coursework isn't rigorous enough and the degree doesn't mean anything. So I'm not knocking any online programs. I'm just saying, just really be mindful I know you want your kids to go to these certain schools. Just be careful, because one thing that's circulating around is like these high school honor society, sign your kid up for $75, they get to be in a book, and in this society you get a bumper sticker, and really it's just a scam to get the money from the parents, because like your honor roll to who, and this book is getting seen by who, and you get a bumper sticker, so what? And so it's just be careful, because I do know a lot of times parents can be competitive and they want to show the accolades of their students. So, but just be careful of the things that you're signing up for. Like these honor societies of like, and we have a database worth of scholarships. You know, FastWeb is a website that's been around for years, and you can get the same thing. Scholarly is an app, you can get the same thing. So just be careful on services that are asking you to pay, because there's a lot of resources around where you can get it for free.
Right.
So.
And there's no guarantee. And I think most of the times when parents do that and they get into that competitive, it's more so because they start believing somehow, some way that that's the key to getting them into these higher ed institutions, or these private, I should say, these private higher ed institutions. And it's like, there's no guarantee. I mean, unless you try to pay your kid in, because I know that has either way. Let's not get here.
Oh my goodness, because we definitely seen those people who bribed and paid like $250,000 and the kids got into Stanford, Harvard, and the like. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about how people say affirmative action with the thing, and you took my spot, when really your family bought a building and you took my spot. How about that?
I mean, listen.
Yeah.
But we do have to speak on how nationwide, these are key educational issues as we trying to reopen schools with COVID-19, and pretty much the whole theme of how we're going to implement and discuss our times, and how we're having a new civil rights era, because that's that's what I'm going to call it, because that's what it is to me. And just how we're prohibiting discrimination and trying to revamp maybe the social science departments and their curriculum, and ensuring that equal access to education, whether hybrid or approaching it through remote learning, and how you were speaking on, do they have the equipment such as laptops and Wi-Fi? And what does that look like for higher ed for those students who are hybrid? Do they all get a laptop? What's going on?
Okay, so in higher education, I will say it's a little bit different, because, you know, in secondary education, you have to go until you're 16. And so those things have to be provided. And when you're electing to go to college, for the most part, you are saying that I'm doing this by my own accord and my own free will. And the expectation is a little bit more like they want you to be autonomous and you have those things. But the one thing that I can say, I can't speak for everyone, but the one thing I can say in the things that I have seen is universities are helping those students in need, because it has been identified now more than ever that a lot of the graduate students have been homeless, and this brought it out, because a lot of them were like couch surfing and just going to the school gym to shower and just staying at the library at all hours just to have a place to be. And for those students, they have been able to find like temporary on-campus housing where they're able to, like, not necessarily quarantine, because quarantine implies that you have it, but they're able to social distance there. And I also noticed, like, as far as the materials, like a laptop, you need a laptop, you need your books, you need things like of that nature. So one of the things that I've noticed about schools, if you are in need, they usually have like it's called a CARES team. There's an acronym for something it's escaping me right now, but most schools have a CARES team where they will provide the student with a laptop. Because at the end of the day, a lot of these libraries have laptops, but because we can't go on campus, they can pull those from their resources and ship to the students at no charge. So what from I've seen, and I'm happy to know that they've been really helping our students in that way. What else have I noticed in higher education? How it all happened, though, I really wish the reaction was a little bit different. I wish there was some consistency across all campuses. Like, for example, I am remote until spring 2021. Harvard is remote until the end of spring 2021. Certain people in the South start classes in 2 weeks. So I think that is, it's just like
the utmost high.
Oh goodness. So I guess for me, I do wish that things were more consistent just throughout, because like no matter what's happening, no matter where I go to, what university I'm working for, I'm thinking about the students' best interest. And I feel like there's really no way to make them feel safe and bringing them back to campus. I do feel like the hybrid approach probably is the best happy medium. And what do I mean by hybrid? I feel like you'll have like these large lecture classes that have like 200 to 300 students in it. Yeah, but what about the small labs where you could have fewer amount of students in there and they're spread out? I do feel like you have to keep in mind the international students who like they had student visas, and being on campus and in person, like it does influence their eligibility to stay here in certain cases. So you don't want to think that, you know, from this perspective, like we're all American and we can be here and that's just that. No. Yeah. So I think that's like a hybrid approach might be one of the better things that we can do. But in general, we've now seen more than ever, things can be remote. I remember in my very first day of my first job, I was asking about being remote and working offsite and doing this and that. And I will never forget, my director was just like, your job is to work with students. How can you do that not in the office?
Look at us.
Meanwhile,
Look at us.
fast forward 4 years later, now with the effects of COVID and people wanting the social distance and not to have the liability of saying that you put students' lives in danger, we're doing everything remote. It's showing us that just because we did something the same way for a long time doesn't make it right. So now we're finding these innovative ways to engage. We're finding these innovative ways to stay connected. So whether you're using the Zoom platform, you're using WebEx, whether you're having like online game nights or just like, yeah, we're figuring it out. And so it makes me feel like we're never going to go back to what was normal. I feel like there's going to be a new normal. And I think from moving forward, we'll now have more hybrid things of like pre-recorded videos, live stream videos, and in person. I think that's the new wave. I think like that's the status of like higher education. I think like, and I think it's about time. I feel like higher education has been one of the most stagnant industries simply because like we're built on tradition, and people really like, they need that tradition, and it's great. And it's just like, we've from 1865, we've been doing this. And it's like, that's great. But when it comes to efficiency and me doing my job, I'm gonna tell you, there's something else that we can do that's a little bit better. Just a little bit better.
I do want to know, aside from those things, how, like, what does it look like right now in regards to like the curriculum? Do you think that we need to revamp? What is your take on
it? Okay, so I do understand that everybody's in different disciplines, but the one good thing about the American education system, especially in reference to college, is everybody has to take these general education courses. And I think now more than ever, we need to mandate that everybody takes some type of diversity and inclusion course, or some culture competency course, or some type of political understanding. I think that too often we don't want to have that difficult dialogue, and we feel like it's okay, they'll figure it out. They don't want to push political views. But I think that certain things that people believe are just wrong. And if they feel uncomfortable in the class, it's okay to feel uncomfortable. That's a part of the learning. So there's going to be certain people who disengage and don't want any part of it. But I think that it's important to say that we did our due diligence as educators to facilitate environments that taught them a better and new way. So even when I worked at a university in the South, I did this lecture in the summer for the incoming freshman students about diversity and inclusion. And I think I touched a lot of them and I made some uncomfortable. So I spoke about my experience, how like I am on campus, and depending on what I am wearing determines how someone treats me. If I'm wearing relaxed clothes and sweats, people treat me like I don't belong and question why I'm there and what am I doing, like policing me in a sense. Or if I'm dressed nicely, they're like, oh, I guess she's a professor. Like, I guess she's a professor. But I was just like, do you know how it feels to feel alienated and I work here? And I literally belong here. They pay me to be here, but I'm getting policed and people are questioning, or feeling like the things that I have to say and want to contribute aren't valuable enough. I think that's why it's important. Like a lot of these students, because I've been at PWIs, I've been at HSIs, and I do feel like, particularly at the PWIs, like those students need to understand some of these inherent things some of these things that you think are inherent are not, because racism isn't inherent, it's taught. Race is a social construct. So I think if you come from that perspective, let's talk about it. Because the biggest thing for some of the most like racist people I know, they've never met or talked to a Black person in their life. So the things that they don't like about, and I'm using Black person as a reference because I'm Black, because I don't want to offend anybody. So if I say something about Black people, anyways, they're saying things about Black people and you've never met a Black person. So you have these passed down stories of, my uncle said the one time when he did and it's just like, okay. So for me, I would love to see consistent curriculum when it comes to like the general education, having some type of global citizenship, cultural competency, diversity. I don't care what name you need to give it, but you need to have people understanding the things that you do influences people's college experience. And you have, depending on their skin tone, i.e. a Caucasian person, you have somewhat the power to make people feel wanted here or not. Do you invite me to your study group or not? When I sit down, do you move or not? When you go to housing and you realize I'm in your dorm room, do you move? Because things like that make me wonder, did you do that because I look like me, or were you going to do that naturally? And I feel like that is something that needs to be unpacked, and they need to like open up. And that even includes international students, because especially with COVID, xenophobia is real. So xenophobia, the fear of foreign things and people. So I had my students like talk to me about their experience in the Bay Area, and I was like heartbroken. I'll give you 2 examples. My students were sitting out eating lunch, and this is before we shut down for COVID. A person walked up to them and said, "You need to take yourself and that disease back with you to China." Do you know how I feel like I get chills just like repeating it. Do you know how hurtful it is for a person to be like wanting to come to America, loving everything American and pretty much praising anything American, and then a person to pretty much like look down on you and say, take you and yourself back to your country with that disease? And so I had to have the uncomfortable conversation of like, sometimes there's people in America that are friendly, and then there's also some people who have some thoughts that are not okay, and it was not okay for them to do that. And I had to like give the whole spiel of like, if you're feeling uncomfortable, you can talk to me. If not me, we have counseling services, because like what happened to you is it's not okay. The second one, we had 2 students who were on a train, and this was like around the same time of like COVID and stuff happening. They were from India, and like a couple of people like got up from the train and just like was just like, you see these Indian like obscenities, and like F these Indian obscenities, and like they're sitting here and telling me that. So as like a student services director, my job is supposed to help support them, whether it be academically, professionally, personally. So when you're telling me about your story, I'm like heartbroken, and the only way, and the sad thing, the only way I'm able to relate is to tell them about my Blackness. As a Black woman, people treat me the same way. And I understand there's been a history in America, whether you know it or not, about racism. And you know me as Professor Jasmin because I do teach. I am a faculty member. If you look at my IP, I'm a faculty member. So you guys call me Professor Jasmin. Other people don't know if I'm a good Black person or bad Black person. And I use the example of, living in the Bay Area, it is traditionally white. And the only people of color you see are usually homeless. So I'm constantly feeling policed and scanned over of like, is this a good Black person or is this a bad Black person? And I use that example. And the sad thing is they understood. So that is the one thing that I hope that we do better in higher education, just so we have like more people with a better understanding of what diversity is and what these people go through and what's real, because like something has to happen. And I think now more than ever, there's a term called performative allyship. I don't want you to pretend to be an ally and say the things that I want to hear, but in your day-to-day life, you're being a Karen or Ken. I don't need it. So in pop culture reference, it's called being a Karen or Ken, but typically those are people who take it upon themselves to police Black and brown bodies and tell them what they should or should not be doing when they don't have the authority to do so. So now, moving forward, now, like, I just feel so hot. So now more than ever, I want people to truly understand what's happening and not just be using, because I do feel like a couple years ago, saying Black Lives Matter was met with, but all lives matter. So now that we've gotten past that, and now that you guys seen why we say it and they have a better understanding, I think talking about like Black Lives Matter and going to these protests, it's almost like it's like a hashtag to put up, and it's another post for your IG block grid. I don't want it to be that, and that's performative allyship. Again, as I've said, I feel like I've said this so many times throughout this like session. I need for your words and your actions to align.
Always a good time.
Girl.
Well, you left me no questions in that department. Moving on to turnover. Let's speak on that. Let's speak on turnover and the reality of how it's in our face right now.
Okay, so the interesting thing about turnover, I feel like people go into the education profession because they are passionate about it. Regardless if you're working in higher education, secondary education, you want to best serve students. And most of the time people appreciate the teacher, but they don't appreciate us monetarily, and they don't appreciate our time. So you think a teacher's great. I love the teacher. You're so wonderful, but you keep giving me more work. I'm so good. Oh, you're so good. I think you could add on this. You're so good. I'm going to add on this. And you're so good. I'm going to add on this. I am one person, and I don't speak for all educators, but this is something I've seen. It is just us. I'm glad that you think we do a good job, but it's inappropriate to constantly give me more responsibilities without the increased title and the increased pay. That is what leads to burnout. And then when I say increased responsibilities, how many students do you want me to monitor? How many students do you want me to be responsible for? If the number keeps getting bigger, but you're not giving me the resources to do it, whether it be I'm paying for stuff for the classroom, whether it be I'm paying for stuff out of my pocket, like that is taxing. And it gets to a point where you feel like you're in a bad relationship. The school is the boyfriend and you're the girlfriend, and the school is like, I don't have it right now. I really love you, but I don't have it. It's like, so you want to go on these lavish vacations and dates and not pay. So you want me to show up every single day, buy stuff for the classroom, buy stuff for the students, smile, have more responsibilities. Like, you can't have it both ways. So people get to a point where they don't feel appreciated, you get burned out, and then you leave. And I feel like you have a lot of people who are great educators, but have had such bad experiences that you want to go. I can even use myself as an example. I've been off of work, I guess, this whole entire summer. School's coming back, students are coming back. I'm in my first week back to work, and I feel so overwhelmed. It's almost like each time school starts back, I forget what I went through. So now school's starting again, and I'm just like, how did I ever do this? Like, I'm stressed. So when it comes to PowerPoints and curriculum, so for example, whether it be math, whether it be science, whether it be professional development, if you're working on a content area and I'm supposed to be the expert, I need to upload my stuff in Canvas. But before I do that, I need to build it all out. I need to build out the respective PowerPoints, or whether you use Prezi, whatever you're using, you need to build that out. And if you're going to have homework assignments, you need to build that out. There's a lot of like layers in it. So it's time consuming. It doesn't take an hour just to throw together a lesson plan. So that's why I feel like a lot of times we're, as educators, are feeling burnt out. And I feel like a lot of times we're like the coach, we're the cheerleader, we're the counselor, we're all those things, because the students, for the most part, the students lean on you, and sometimes their problems become your problems. If a student comes to you with an issue, you feel like they entrusted me with this.
Yeah.
So either you try to link them to a resource to help fix it, or you try to be the fixer. And I think that now that I'm so far into my career, I had to learn that their issues aren't my issues. Like, and if they don't succeed in trying to fix it, that is not a reflection that I'm a failure, because I tried to do what I can do. Because at the end of the day, I'm not the parent, I'm not the person. I am just the educator that can get you to the resource or try to help the best I can. And I think that as educators, maybe burnout wouldn't happen so much if we were able to establish clear boundaries. But it's very hard when most people who are teachers are, not that they're type A, but if we are supposed to be the point of authority and supposed to exhibit excellence, like, that's a hard cross to bear every day. And that's where I'm at with it. Like, I hate to say it, but sometimes I can be a perfectionist, and it takes me a little bit longer to do everything because I'm thorough. So I'm back for a week and I'm tired already, guys. I'm tired.
Oh my goodness. And you led us right into, what does relationship building with students and school officials, what does it look like now?
I think, you mean like because of COVID and things like that, or just like in general, before all this stuff, post or pre-COVID?
Well, let's take a walk down memory lane and what does it look like now? Yeah.
Okay, so for me, relationship building has always been about being present and being able to solve problems. So a lot of my students come to me with a myriad of issues, whether it be they had got in trouble with student conduct, whether it be academic and I feel like I'm not going to pass, whether it be about I'm emotionally broken and it's affecting my day-to-day. So it is my job to, like, if I can't talk you through how to fix it, I get you to the next best person. And I feel like it makes you almost like a parenting figure. So the relationship builds because it's just like, I depend on you. Because I think secretly it's nice to feel like a person really appreciates what you have to say and they value what you have to say. So I think relationships work both ways. I help the students a lot because they make me feel valued that my colleagues don't, you know? So I think the relationship has built more so like that. And anytime they need me, unfortunately, I say I'm not going to answer. I answer. And I can't help it. I try to create those boundaries, but I would like to think that as an international student, your parents aren't here. You've never lived outside of your home. And the first time you did that is in a new country. If it were me, I would really want somebody to really take the onus upon them to not only do their job and do their job well. So that's why I love working, as a director in student services, because like I get to work with a lot of things. And even though it can be chaotic, it's like, it's nice to feel like I'm resolving student issues and making them better. The next thing about building student relationships, some of it has to do with my personality. I really feel like my purpose, whether I was an educator or not, is to make people better. And I've noticed that people come into my life when they need it the most. Plot twist. So I usually say or do something that pours into them in a way that makes them like, I can do this, and it uplifts them, and then they go on to do the next thing. So I think it yay. So I think you know me well enough, so I think you've been able to experience some of that. But it allows me to, walk in my purpose and make people better. And I think they feel it. They know that it's authentic. They know that when I say something to them and I mean it. And at the end of all my classes, I would always leave with an encouraging word. And one of the biggest things with them being international students, I always would leave, of course, with saying like, I don't know who needs to hear this, but you matter. The things that you say matter, and you have a lot to offer and to contribute to a classroom and to a job. And so I want you to leave feeling good. So I think that I've never had a professor say those things to me, and I wish I would have. And so I think that also builds in the rapport, specifically with me, because they know that I care. And I think it shows in like, as the year went on, like they've given me all type of great gifts and given me all type of praise and told me so many thank yous. And it's just like, it works. So I do feel like it's appropriate for us to build the rapport, because like one of the things with student retention is when a student feels connected to their campus community, and to the faculty and staff, they're likely to stay. Because like, who wants to be in a place where they don't feel like they belong? I think that we have to be mindful as educators and as like professionals who are working in the field. We are now the point of authority, and the things that we say can either make them feel good or it can make them feel very small and diminished. So just being careful to keep that in mind, and just like really always, like when I say so into them, it's just like, it's like their person. Imagine a water and you're pouring in something into them and you're helping that it fills them up so they can be like a whole person.
Yeah.
And so like, it's not just me who's going to help that happen, but I can be a part of that journey to help that happen, because you never know what these students are going through. So just your encouraging words can mean so much, because like they're not going to share every little secret, but like just having that one person there that you know is going to like uplift you. And I heard that a lot of times people can't wait to come to my class because they always leave feeling good. I'm just like, oh, yeah, cool.
Oh man. So what are your main concerns right now, and what are the challenges that we're looking at going into the semester?
My main concern, it's like twofold. My main concern with higher education and with my job are separate. So with higher education, as I mentioned before, I don't want it just to be, what's the best words? I don't want higher education to just become like, you go off to school and it's a diploma mill. Because admission rates are down, I do feel like schools are just like reaching. They're trying to grab any and everybody. And I don't think that they've necessarily thought through what that looks like when students get on campus. For example, like I had mentioned previously, that I've been looking at different PhD programs. And of course, you put your information in. I started some applications, and like, I didn't finish some. And they're reaching out to me like, extended deadline. Come here, we'll give you this. And like, I don't want to feel like a higher education institution is a car salesman trying to upsell me or undersell me on something. It's a little bit strange. So I just want us to be.
If we all know that higher ed is a business, but you don't. It's almost like you don't want to know or feel like it's a business, even though you.
Yeah,
It is.
yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah, but I think the interesting thing about school being the business, I'd rather feel like I'm the business and not the diploma is the business. Like, you're just trying to get my money. I want to be the business, because when I'm the business, you're looking at ways to make me grow. You're looking at ways to make me marketable. You're looking at ways to get return on my investment. Like, we got these alumni who, like, when they go off into the field, people want more of them. So that's how I think about it. So,
Man, no, that's a good take. Yeah, that's how
yeah,
it should be.
yes.
Wow. And your take on inclusion and diversity in relation to everything going on.
I have so much. Oh, I forgot to follow up on my challenges that I feel like what's happening at my job. Let me finish that up really quick. So working in international education, I think the biggest challenge is making sure that they're included in these conversations. Again, they have different things to worry about, like they have their student visas. When everything happened and students were told that you have to be removed from the dorms, where do you think they can go? So a lot of my students are heavily from a Mandarin speaking country, and they weren't allowed to go back home, or getting a flight kept getting canceled. So what do you do for those students? So my biggest thing for like where I work, I just want them to keep the international perspective in mind, because now at this point, students can't do too much if you're in the States. No other countries are going to take us right now because we haven't got a hold on it. So that's the biggest challenge right now. And I guess another challenge I want them to keep in mind of, for students who are overseas, what does classes look like? If you are in 15 hours ahead and this class is at this time, standard Pacific time, because we're in California, how can a student wake up in the middle of the night and take these classes and really be present?
That's crazy.
So I think that the challenge is they're putting the onus on the student of like, sucks to suck, do whatever you need to do, make it work, instead of looking at it from the perspective of like, okay, we're going to have dual classes for our US-based students and for our overseas-based students. I don't think that it's okay to go forward, because I know you mentioned curriculum, but let's just think about even like how we model out the classes. I don't think that you can just have a required course like math, chemistry, or psychology, whatever course, held at standard Pacific time at 2 p.m. and not have any other sections. From what I've been seeing, it seems just like those students are just going to have to make do and wake up in the middle of the night. And I think that that's going to be a problem. And this whole, no, we're going to do a pass-fail. That's why students were up in arms saying that our degree is not going to be worth as much. I do have a lot of competitive students who want to say they have a 4.0 GPA. What is this whole pass-fail thing? So a person who's not doing as much work as me, working as hard as me, they can still pass the class. And technically, if we were to look at it on a grading scale, I would have an A and they would have a C. I don't think that that's fair. There's a lot of problematic things that need to get ironed out, whether it be how we do the grading, whether it be the housing and accommodations. But just know that everybody has a different background, and even if you weren't international, what about people who don't have good home relationships? So for example, if you come from an abusive home, or if your house is overcrowded, or if you have a home that is like, a lot of students are coming from poverty. So what if your home is one of the ones where it's just like, just by chance we don't have internet, or the light bill didn't get paid, your lights might get cut out. Like, you need to think about like how you are influencing a student's learning environment now. So I think that's a problem that needs to get considered. Really be thinking through like, what is the best decision for everybody and how we're going to accommodate it. Because not everyone has a good relationship with their parents or their family, or if they have one, because think about foster children, like that's a thing. Or what if I have like a volatile relationship with my father? Or I do feel like, especially with women and children, and well, you know what, I'm not gonna say women and children. I think that sometimes people get abused, and I don't mean whether it be physically or sexually, from people who are in that house, and college is an escape. So think about those things. Not everybody can do this at home. I'm in my own house and I'm ready to go.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
My heart's so heavy right now. Yeah. That makes me, sorry, I needed a minute. That made me a little sad.
Sorry. No, I feel like I got chills talking about it. But hopefully I am conveying that I'm passionate about these things. You know, on this call, I am, venting a little bit, but these are the truths that people don't get to see. And typically when I'm at work, everybody just gets they see the end process, but they don't see how I got there.
Right.
So.
I want to cry.
I'm sorry, don't mean to trigger. And maybe we should put trigger warnings in. Wow, I did my job.
Yeah, because it's just like, if they do look at it, and I am crying actually. They do look at it as an escape. It's like, this is the one thing I was probably looking for. This was my past. This was my key. This was a lot of. I don't think at times like we forget that like education really for them, even since you were like 3, your teachers have been instilling into you that your education is key. And for those kids that really do take those things to heart and see a way out, like how meaningful this is to them, and just like the disparities and the disadvantages that like now they really do have to deal with. And just like when you thought that you had the door about to open, it gets shut back in your face. And so like, yeah, that makes me sad, because you already know my background. I mean, I've said it so many times in social services, but like, yeah, that experience in itself is just like, wow.
Woo. Girl.
But to kind of
so sorry for the triggers, but I know you want to talk about diversity and inclusion, and I have so much to say about this. Where do I even start with diversity and inclusion? I want people to understand diversity and inclusion doesn't just mean Black, and I'm tired of having people in leadership in higher education and only be for diversity inclusion. Let's start there. I think the main reason why I was really considering going into educational policies is because I wanted to go into rooms that most people are not allowed. And that's what I mean, like, about performative allyship. Like, I want these allies to be in rooms speaking about the Black perspective, the Latinx perspective, every perspective in between, when they're discussing what should we be doing about, whether it be curriculum or programming or, anything in between. So diversity and inclusion for me, I guess it's just like, I don't know. I guess I'm trying to like use my words very carefully.
Listen, this is my podcast. This is my platform. You express yourself in your best.
Okay.
Come see. Go ahead.
I think it's, for me, diversity and inclusion is great, but for me, it's like, do you want equality or do you want equity? So it's just like, I don't want to be included to this table and you're tolerating me. I want to have the same things as everybody else, and if I wasn't at an even playing field, that you give me more resources so I can still thrive. And I think that that's an interesting conversations that we need to have as educators, because like a person who had the resources in high school is going to have a higher GPA automatically than a person who, like, high school didn't have advanced courses, or they didn't have tutors built in, or they didn't have college counselors. So it's just like, yeah, you can give a person a math class and this and that, but if my school is run down and if my teachers are getting burnt out, because a lot of them are Teach for America's people who just want to get their student loan paid off and want to be saviors to these inner city Black and brown students, like, it's different. So when I think about diversity and inclusion, I just want people in the college setting, and I'm bringing this from the higher ed perspective of like, diversity doesn't just mean we're making things better for Black students, because I do feel like there's other people who need to be included in that. And even if we are just talking about Black students, I feel like sometimes people miss the mark. No, I don't want to just have a Martin Luther King holiday. That is phenomenal that you want to talk about one of the civil rights leaders, and I think that we all understand he played a tremendous part in the civil rights movement. However, I do want you to know about these admissions policies, the treatment in the student conduct office when 2 people get in trouble and one person gets gets a higher or worse sentence than the other. I do want you to talk about where we in class and you're pulling me out because you think I plagiarized when really I just write really well, and you just think that I cannot because I am a Black person. So, or even, I will never forget, we were all in class for our research method course, and the teacher yelled at me like, "Do you want to get out of this class?" I was like, "Wait, what?" And he was just like, "Why are you doing your math homework?" And I had to hold up his book and said that I'm going over the point that you just made and I didn't understand it, so I was reading. Meanwhile, everyone in the class is on Facebook. Listen, so I have to sit and think about those things of like, would you have said that if I looked like something else? Because I think it's very interesting how he was trying to use me as the example. And it's just like, do you think that I can take it? Do you automatically think that because I look like me, I was doing something wrong? Because I think it's interesting how the whole role that I was in, everybody was disengaged, and literally, and I'm not just saying like, it's not me just like saying it is and trying to like overdo it. Literally everybody in the row was on Facebook because he was boring and you're not good at your job. And the reason I didn't understand is because you weren't a good professor. How about that? Sir. Professor, sir. But I think that diversity and inclusion is something that is a hot topic thing. And I also don't want this. These jobs have an outlandish amount of work experience that they expect. I just want you to know, if 10 years ago, you didn't expect to have a diversity and inclusion office or person working in that role, don't expect 10 years of diversity and inclusion, experience. Okay, for example, I just was recently looking up Facebook. Facebook had this role, they had diversity and inclusion, and they said they wanted 12 years of diversity and inclusion and equity experience and experience with building out. I was like, 12? I look at another role, they want 8. Not that these problems have been highlighted because of COVID, but they have always been here. But I feel like there always has to be a little bit of buy-in on where we're going to spend this money, And I don't think that was on initiatives that were about diversity and inclusion. And don't quote me on this. This is just from my lived experience and the different universities that I've been at. And at this point, I've literally either worked or attended a school literally from Florida to the South to the Midwest to now on the West Coast. And I do a lot of my professional development at schools in the Northeast. So I've touched on all of them. And from what I've seen, like, this is now a new position that we're opening up, a new chief of diversity. And it's just like, why didn't you have that before? So don't have these unrealistic expectations. And I do also feel like there's transferable skills. And a lot of people know that. So.
And the funny thing is that, I've been on the hunt doing my job search, my whole journey, my career search journey. And I've been seeing a lot of those positions actually now that you mentioned them. And I'm like, who are they hiring?
Yeah, who are they hiring? My thing is like, what does your board look like? How about that? Because I know, like, social media isn't the end all be all. I get it. But I really wish I had the exact page. But anyways, there was a page on Instagram where all these different companies had to show the data for and the picture of their board. And a lot of these companies, they didn't have it. They were like stretching the truth. Like, I'm a woman and I agree that it's great that you put that, but don't include that when we know what we're really talking about. We're talking about, do you have people of color? Don't say we have a diverse board and we have 20% female. Where are the people of color? Because my thing is, like, even if you don't even have Asian, you have like the Latinx community, you don't have Black, it's like, who do you have?
What do you have?
What do you have? And that's why a lot of these movies miss the mark, these commercials miss the mark. Okay, let me give you two examples how stuff misses the mark when you don't have, you know, Black and brown content creators there. What about this? Was it Kylie Jenner in the Pepsi commercial?
Kendall.
When she
Yes.
she had the Kendall. Sorry, I mixed them up. Kendall. I apologize. Don't roast me.
Same thing.
One of the Jenner sisters. No, Kendall. So Kendall was in that Pepsi commercial where she goes up to the police officer and shares a Pepsi with him, and everybody cheering and they're so excited. And it's so very hurtful because during the same time, that same time frame, Black and brown people have constantly said there's been an overuse of force with police, and that many times they kill us and there's no repercussions. Hence why we say Black Lives Matter, because people act like they don't. It misses the mark. And I really feel like if they would have had a person of color, they would have said like, hey man, this is really racially insensitive.
But no one was there.
But no one was there. Okay, so next thing, some of these movies, like I love The Walking Dead, but if I see one more bad lock wig, I'm gonna scream. Like, why? I feel like if you had like a person of color on that, they would tell you like, it looked like a hat on the head and it's supposed to be a wig. Like, get that hat off the head. Like, it looked, so it's just like, I'm supposed to be enjoying the show, but as a person who knows what it's supposed to look like we have all this technology and all this creative makeup design, and you have like this inappropriate ill fit hair on because you want this character to have locks. I don't want to call them dreadlocks because I learned that that's inappropriate, but locks, like the long locks, and it's like ill made and it's on their head strangely, and it's just like, it's so distracting. You have millions of dollars to get this right. Do it. And I feel like that's why it's important to have representation, whether it be in film, media, education, because like those diverse perspectives makes everything better. I don't think that everyone's going to think the same and believe the same, but the whole point is like we're supposed to talk about it. And I can tell you from my perspective what would add to this and make it better, you know?
Absolutely. And I do like that you harped on earlier on the importance of these international students or also immigrant students, international students and immigrant students. Like, let's make a difference. Like, it may sound like the same thing, but we do have students here who have been brought to this country illegally by their parents and do want to pursue a higher education, or just they're in the situation, and pretty much they probably catch the end of, let's say, maybe 2 years of high school, they learned English pretty fast, and they were able to excel and make it into college. However, they're still missing that piece of understanding civil rights here in the United States, and the influence and the impact of African Americans, and just the disparities that we have here among marginalized communities, and how that's not implemented in higher ed because, again, you did not catch it in elementary with the lies your teacher told you about how Columbus was this great explorer, so maybe you didn't miss out on much. But anyways, that's my opinion coming in. So it's just like you said, the basics, the foundations of coming in, and those pre-classes that you take, those core courses that you take, and how do we implement that in the curriculum for those students that are coming in and are trying to navigate, and we're basically creating professionals. Are we creating professionals if we're not giving them that core history?
I think we may be creating ill-equipped professionals, because I think that with any school and any curriculum, we're never going to achieve perfection, but I think we're trying to get close to that. and we're trying to make them well-rounded. And for me, as a person who believes in equity in the classroom, who believe in like things should be diverse, whether it be, you know, having more women present or people of color present, or even let's talk about indigenous people, like all those perspectives matter. So I don't know. I don't know. I feel like I'm at a loss for words.
And I brought that up because I remembered one of my friends in undergrad who happened to, she wasn't from, how can I say, Puerto Rico is still considered part of the United States.
United States territory.
Yeah, President Trump. Anyways, Puerto Rico is still part of the United States. However, most of the time, from my experience, the ones that I have encountered who have come to this country predominantly speak Spanish, and they're not very familiar with, for whatever reason, I don't know if Puerto Rico really doesn't harp on civil rights and what has gone on in this country in regards to just like that matter, that those specific things that happened in history. And she basically gave me like, oh my God, like you really don't know, like this is really an issue, like you really don't get it. You really don't get it.
About that, it's like I often feel like people have this like tendency of out of sight, out of mind. If it doesn't really affect me, then I don't really care about it. So especially being in a place where they can be very insular because they're kind of like off to themselves, and you have to really go out of your way to come to them. So I feel like whether they know it or not, I feel like this is just a product of colonization, and I feel like people are brainwashed. So the fact that they speak Spanish, it's like, okay, who speaks Spanish? Where does Spanish come from? And like, are the Spaniards? And so it's just like, I think that that's just like an earmark of what colonization will do. It's almost like we've erased history, and like you don't even welcome and want to hear about other things. And especially when it comes to like other people's, whether it be them getting discriminated against, or it's like the civil rights issues, which is still, you know, most people like feel like if it doesn't influence me, why does it matter? And I think that that's the biggest problem with the United States. Nobody cares about it until it infringes upon them. So for the longest time, African Americans have been talking about how like we feel like we're being policed, we feel like we're, you know, people are being very aggressive with us. And the moment that, you know, certain people have been told to put on a mask, all of a sudden like, how dare you infringe upon my rights? And they can't take it. And we've been saying our lives are being taken away, and we literally aren't making it. So police and everybody are pushing the policies, the federal government, we're pushing the line further back. So we're not crossing the lines, we're just pushing it further back. And now that they have certain civil liberties, you know, taken away, now they feel like, okay, maybe something needs to be done because our civil liberties are important. As Americans, it is our divine right to be able to do X, Y, Z. And we've been saying the same thing, but because it didn't impact them in the way that they thought was, you know, relevant, nobody cared. But now that the federal government is like really telling you what you can and cannot do and like mandating it, now all of a sudden our civil liberties are so important. And that's like, Black Lives Matter, and we have to do something about this.
Yeah, and now, I mean, that definitely highlights like our issue with proximity too. Like, what the importance of proximity still? Do we value proximity?
Proximity to whiteness? Sorry, I'm just clarifying.
Proximity to the issues at hand. Proximity to the issues at hand.
But I feel like, are they different? I feel like I dare to say it's the same thing. The reason why I say that is I do feel like there's a demographic of people who hasn't had as many issues and problems, whether it be academic gaps, wage gaps, discrimination. It's a demographic here who, let's just call it out, Caucasian people in America, they haven't had to undergo certain things, right? So when we're talking about proximity to problems, I'm not saying that their lives are perfect, but the things that affect me on a day-to-day are because I'm Black. And so my proximity to whiteness, I will say, allows me to have a little bit of a better life. And before somebody chews me out, like, what do you mean your proximity to whiteness? From working at an institution as a professor, from like just being able to have an advanced degree, people associate that with whiteness. They don't say like, oh, you're like, oh, that's so great that you do that. Because no, they think that it's me assimilating into what I think white is, whether it be like the way that I speak, the way that I dress. I've had comments that has to do with like that being close to my proximity to whiteness. And I don't like that. I don't like that at all. So going back to proximity, I feel like, again, the closer you are to a problem, the more likely that you're willing to speak out about it, because you have a brother, sister, cousin, or a personal experience that has made you feel like this isn't acceptable and I want to make it better, you know? So, and then people who are further away from it and they have like a bird's eye view, they're just kind of like looking at it from a, well, I read on BuzzFeed that these people were looting and they're terrorists. You're worried about George Floyd, but you're looting when we're up. So they don't get it because they're so far removed from the proximity, not really digging into it. Because the biggest thing is like, why are people so upset and so desperate that they feel like they need to do that? Let's talk about the wage gap between African Americans and Blacks here in the United States. So I think everything is complex. I think there's onions and there's layers, and I'm just speaking from my lived experience. So I feel like if anyone listens to any of this, just understand that I'm talking from my lived experience as an educator working from coast to coast, and the things that I've seen, I've felt, and this is my truth. And I don't want to demean anybody. I don't want to make anyone feel bad and say this group of people. I'm just speaking about my experience, and that's simply just what it is. And it's been some great things, and there's been some bad things, but I do feel like there has to be balance. I do feel like I'm really close to proximity to the issues and problems of when it comes to like civil liberties, and I get that, but I do realize I'm also living a better life perhaps than a lot of people, because like I've been able to use education as a tool for upward mobility and be able to like work a job that's in my purpose, and be able to, when I'm working as a person at a university, meet my partner because he also is like doing a graduate program there. So it's just like, yeah, it's interesting. So I do understand, like I have some privileges within my own subtext and culture.
Let's touch on, let's lighten it up a little bit. Let's lighten it up a little bit. Well, this is still not light, but how are we navigating, well, what does it look like for those who are going back into dorms on campus, and how they're handling public health and ensuring that that's going along?
You know something interesting? Okay, so on a lighter note, this is what I really feel. COVID has been good and bad when it comes to like cleanliness. Okay, all of a sudden everything is super clean and I'm so excited about it. Everyone, we wiping down high touch point areas. We separating people, like you don't have to share a dorm room. So like at my university, usually it's 2 people to a room. They're spreading people out. You get your own room to yourself. They're like making it where there's a person who comes and cleans very frequently. The showers are not shared. So for me, this is like a great experience. So of course, I'm not saying that people aren't getting sick from COVID. I'm not saying that people haven't experienced like mental health well-being issues because of COVID. I'm saying that because of the precautions, things seem to be better. Like for example, going to the campus restaurants, like they're limiting the amount of people. And for me, sometimes when things are noisy and too many people, I don't have a good experience. So now you can go in, do what you need to do, sit down with people, and it not be overcrowded, because they're trying to keep it not at capacity, but even lower than capacity. So at the university I'm at, I've seen improvements with them really trying to make the students feel safe. To that same point, we have certain dorms that are apartment style, and we have certain dorms that are like the traditional, it's a building. One thing that I noticed is they close any dorm that's like in a building because they were worried about the HVAC ducts. They said that with those, and forgive me if I'm explaining it wrong, but from what I got, they're interconnected from room to room, and it's recycled air throughout the whole building. So they were concerned if someone did contract it and need to quarantine, they couldn't keep our students safe. So I love that they let students know, like, you can't live here, we're shifting you. So I think that it's really nice it's nice that they were transparent and said, like, for your safety, this building is not equipped to handle, quarantine, and we're going to put you over here. So I like it. Honestly, for a person who's very clean, some of these things that people are doing, I already did. I'm just like, I've been carried wipes in my bag. I've been had hand sanitizer in my bag. Like, I don't understand, like, people wash your hands, just don't sanitize, use your hand sanitizer. Also, wash your hands soap and water. But I think it's interesting that we've had to tell people this. What else have I seen on campus? This is before everything shut down. One thing that I noticed, even with the pens, I saw that they were like spraying down the pens when it came to, because people use the pen to sign. It's like, it was beautiful. And like with the utensils, they stopped having the ones that are like, how they have like the little bowl, the cup, and they put them all in there. They started doing prepackaged ones. And I was just like, this is what we should have did in the beginning. Like, it goes to show that as a country, we had a certain level of acceptance for germs. We're just like, this is like buffet style, this is open style. We understand it's a little germy, but we accepted it. Because I think it's interesting how now that we're being precautious, how many prepackaged things, how much wiping down we're doing, how much, like, even with here, everyone commutes. So even with the trains, they're just like, we sanitize every hour. You mean you weren't before?
Man.
So I've been eating it up. I feel great. That's just me. I do understand that I'm in California. I do feel like we were the first to do the shelter in place. We've had the strictest, I guess, guidelines and mandates, and it feels like I'm on curfew, but I also do feel safe.
Yes. So this looks like we're probably creating a new culture.
Yes, and I think that it needs to happen. I do feel like sanitation is big, and the thing that frustrates me the most is, okay, for example, why is it that we're able to get on planes and they can sanitize, but we can't go to hairdressers who took whole courses on sanitation? It blows my mind on what we think is acceptable and what's not. But I do feel like this has created a new culture and a new norm that I'm all for it, because I do think that even after COVID goes away, we do want to keep ourselves safe, because like as things start to mutate and things happen and exposure, keep things clean.
So how do you think, now I want to transition, and thank you for giving me some valuable insight as what it's looking like in regards to public health and making sure that the students are, being looked after in regards to their public health. Let's talk a little bit about Greek life, because I feel like part of Greek life, there's a lot of hazing. And that, well, part of Greek life is hazing. And with this COVID-19, how is Greek life surviving? What does Greek life look like?
So I would personally say that I do understand that hazing is something that is not supported by any of these Greek letter organizations. And given anybody who's on their leadership board, they will tell you that it is prohibited and they don't believe in it. But as educators, we do understand that it does happen and it's happening. So I just want to put that interjection in there. So don't everybody bite my head off. We get that you're not supposed to hate. We get it. And it's against your policies. We get it. But one of the things I would say out here, particularly, this is not a MPHC organization, Greek organization. They have a house out here, and we've been able to contact trace that they had a party, and now like over 20 students have now tested positive. And when they did the contact trace, it went back to this specific Greek house. So I think the biggest thing is like, with everything going remote, I feel like students have had this like opportunity to just kind of like hang out and just be with each other, and they don't have so much to do. Like if you can't go out and about and do things, it's almost like a party every day in your home. And with these Greek letter organizations, if they do have a house here and people are able to come here, I think that they are not adhering to the rules, because like with any of our campus housing, you're supposed to like be one to a room, don't invite any people over. And it's just like, they didn't do that. And they had a party, and I'm interested to see what is going to be the repercussions of that. And are they going to be rigid, or are they going to be lax? Because what's implicitly like implied with them being at this Greek letter house is that they're well-to-do and their families are well-to-do, period. So yeah, that's my thoughts on specifically where I'm at, the institution I'm at.
And I mean, being a leading question and me wanting to lead into career development, advising, and resources, I know that part of Greek life I have, while working at FIU during my whole internship process, I know that they're very involved in extracurricular activities, or just navigating and finding internships for them, and what it's part of why most people do join Greek life. And I want to lead into the whole career development aspect and the advising and the whole resources, and what is that now.
Okay, so I guess my perspective, especially as an African American woman, I know with the Greek aspect, it's supposed to be another network of people that you can lean into. Because I think we all know the saying, it's not like what you know, it's who you know. And whether you have these mentorships and they're telling you about what to do next, or they're connecting you with other people. Because the interesting thing is, like, I have a person in my life who is a Greek affiliated, and anytime I move somewhere, they're always connecting me and plugging me to the next person. Like, oh, my soror lives here. And like, I'm like, you have a soror everywhere. And so it's really interesting on, like, I'm still reaping the benefit of her connections being Greek affiliated. And so I think that that's important to note. Like, a lot of times people are doing it for the right reasons. And like I said, or maybe you said, excuse me, the professional development is there, because I do feel like with mentorships, that is what helps you to be better and to learn and to grow, because you can't be what you don't see. And especially for African American women, I don't see a lot of us in leadership roles. And I don't see a lot of people taking the time to groom us to be in a leadership role. And so that's why when it comes to me in professional development, I kind of like fell into it, but it's because I feel like I've always had to give 100%, and I've always had to be more than professional. It's almost like excellent is a habit, and it's like either you're excellent or you're nothing. And so that's how I kind of fell into, career development and working with these international students. So for me, I'm not working just with like these Greek letter students. Like, I know when I worked at a school in the South, I worked with some Greek letter students, but specifically now it's transitioned into how do I make international students look really qualified to these, US based jobs, which they're coming to find that they're having their own type of like little issues with that. So do you want me to just go right into career development? Okay, so the biggest thing I can say we as people are a business, and we are an entity, and our personal branding that we show, how our interactions, our first impressions with people, they they form who we are, and they form who people think we are. So for me, with my professional development and how I work with students, I specifically work with them on the marketing themselves. I think the biggest thing with being international students and not having like the concept of what's appropriate sometimes in the US, I'm just like, please don't post that picture. Please don't do this.
Please don't.
Because like I think that in their minds, they think that this is what I did at home. You're asking me for a professional photo to put on my LinkedIn. It's this. And I see the picture and I'm just like, that's not it. Don't give me a grainy photo. I don't want that. Don't give me a photo where you're not dressed appropriately or you're in ill-fitting clothing. I think that I work with graduate level students, and so they're going to expect you to perform at a higher level. So a lot of these students, they went from undergrad directly into grad school, and they haven't got the appropriate suits and things like that. And I was just like, you don't have to break the bank, but like, especially when we're doing stuff like this, like these photos, and people are getting their impression of you, it needs to be pristine, and I have to show them what's appropriate or not. And then for some people, I had to like explain to them, and I know this might sound crazy, like you can't wear things that are revealing. And I think depending on your culture, some people are ultra conservative, and some people are like, I'm beautiful and I need to show people. So I think for me, it was finding that balance of like, I don't ever want people to feel like I'm shaming them. I don't want anyone to ever feel like I'm telling them things and I'm like singling them out. But especially for men and women, I had to tell them what's appropriate, like what's too long, too short, too high, too low, so with building out your digital platform, like, what does your Instagram look like? If you want to have a Finsta, have a Finsta. I feel like your Finsta could be for your people in your personal life and your significant others, your family, but you need to have another social media presence where it's only like your work things. And so I've been having to work with them because like I had them build out a portfolio that had all their stuff and they linked their social media. And I started going on to social media. No, I don't want to see you with your friends and having a good time right now. I don't know why in America we find that unprofessional, but that's just the thing. We don't want to see you out having fun. I want to see you doing some social work. I want to see you in the community. I want to see you leading a lecture. Like, I want to see you doing everything but doing stuff that looks like too much fun. And I think that I wish we would move the needle on what we deem professional. So when I talk about professionalism, I guess I'm going off on a tangent, but let's talk about what is professional. I don't like that in the past people used your hair as if you're professional or not, tattoos as if you're professional or not, and like use it as a basis as a barrier for a job.
Like, what am I gonna do with this? Go on.
Yeah, so for me, I think that it's inappropriate, and I hope to move the needle on that. And I think that things are changing because I do believe it's here in California where they made it against the law to discriminate you based on your hair, which is like, it's so silly that they do that, but it's the truth. Wow. Additionally, when it comes to professionalism, I think students don't even realize like your day-to-day interaction is an interview every day. When I'm working with you and someone asks me, okay, you guys are all in data science, who do you think should get this internship? Who do you think should have this opportunity? We want our data science students to actually go to this country and represent us, or go to Boston to represent us. Who do you think? And I also was trying to explain to them, like, every day is your day to make a good impression. And you have to do that. And I was just like, every day I come in here with you guys and I do my job, and I would hope to think that, my personal brand is like, I'm here to help, I'm here to make people better. And every day I've come in here, you've seen that. So what do you want people to think about you? When you're not in the room, what do you want people to say about you? And that happens in your day-to-day interaction. So it's like, professionalism isn't all the time like inherent. You have to learn it. And it's those little things. And I was also trying to tell them, like, as an international student, people are just trying to beat you out on the job, and you need to leverage the things that you have. Like, a lot of them speak 3 and 4 languages and they don't even have it on their resume. It's like, no, put that on there, say that, because when you're going in these fields, you need to know like what's your competitive edge. Yeah, different stuff like that. What else do we talk about? I guess like when in international education, it's just like knowing when you're getting taken advantage of when it comes to career things. I think that it's inappropriate that they have all these internships that they have to pay for, or internships that's free. And that's the one thing that bugs me about higher education and with professionalism in career development. You want to have these experiences. You want to get this job. But it's like, how do you get those experiences if you don't have experience? So it starts with like internships. And sometimes these internships, like, it's like literally free labor. I'm just like, this is like you being an indentured servant.
Yeah.
I want this experience so desperately that I have to create all these things for you, do all this work for you, and I'm doing it for free, and you don't even seem appreciative. So I see that happen with the international student population a lot. So a lot of times I'm reviewing who they're working with. I'm reviewing how many hours that they're expecting and what's the expectations. And I'm just like, this isn't a good deal. I don't care who they say they are, who they're working for. Having you pretty much work a full-time job and not get paid, it's not okay.
Right. And just educating them on their rights.
Yeah.
What are their rights as a student anyways?
Yeah. But I think the biggest thing for me with professional development and career advising is like, I want students to be the best versions of themselves. And my job is to foster those skills. And some students come to me and they know what they want. And some people come to me and they're still trying to figure it out. And I feel like they've had so many people tell them what they should be. You're going to be a doctor or a lawyer. To the point where their identity is so lost in it that they're scared to shift. And my job is like, at the end of the day, what is your passion? What is your purpose? What are you good at? Let's start there and go. Okay, that didn't help, but how about this? If money and time wasn't a barrier, what would you do? Now tell me that. Because I feel like a lot of times, like, they have this barrier and they want to try to be the perfect doctor or lawyer and do the professional development things that's geared towards that. And I'm talking to you and you're not interested in that. I can tell in the conversation, you don't even want to do that. I don't want students to do things arbitrarily just to put it on their resume or to say that they did it. Everything that you do needs to contribute to your real end goal, not your parents or your auntie. Because I deal with a lot of like Indian students, and my auntie or my guardian told me, no.
Man. Here, tell your auntie.
Yeah. So again, I think that professional development does not stop when you leave college, or even if you didn't go to college. Professional development never stops. And I think that's the biggest thing that I want to share with people, whether you are the director, whether you're the vice provost, whether you're the CFO, CEO, anything in between. I think that times are changing and we constantly have to adjust to the market. And that doesn't happen overnight. You can have your personal experience, but I also think it's nice to have like a structured professional development where you're hearing about the best practices, you're hearing about from your colleagues in the field about what's going on, and you learn from that. I think that people need to be lifelong learners and not always be a person coming from like the expert in the authoritative position. Like, you also need to sit back and lean into it, learn a little bit. I think it's going to make you better as a person, and also it's going to translate into your job in working better and working smarter.
I feel like you're speaking into my season of life. You're speaking into my season of life. Taking a step back from the authoritative approaches and navigating the waters on your own and seeing what does work for you and who you are. We're constantly doing that. And at times we do tend to question ourselves like, man, wasn't there a time or period for that? Wasn't that like back and under? No, you're constantly evolving. As long as you have life, air in your lungs, breath.
With that,
You are growing. Yeah.
And I think that's an important thing. I want to grow. And that's one of the main reasons why I got into higher education. Like, I love the field in the sense of like, there's so many intellectual minds. Like, there's not many jobs where you get to meet people from different countries, different places, different universities, and we're all coming together to work with students, and learning is supposedly always happening. So for me, like, I have access to a wealth of knowledge all the time.
Ooh.
So I feel like I didn't even realize how much I was like, not that I'm a nerd, maybe I'm a nerd adjacent. So I think so I just like love to read stuff and be around people, because the biggest thing is just like, not all education happens in the classroom. I think that you have people who have different disciplines and they took a course, or they went to a lecture, or they listened to a TED talk, and they bring back to you the main talking points, or they bring back to you a great concept and they tell it to you. You like it, you share it. And that's how intellectual property happens. Like, you own something, you like it, you share it out, and then people share it out. And so even though some of the content may get watered down, the biggest thing is that information is getting shared. This is a digital age, this is a sharing age. And I think that that's the great part about being in higher education, is like, we have all these educated people like researching and putting it out, and we're all able to share and have not arguments, but debates, and talk about, yeah, because everybody's coming from a different, that's a great way to put it. We have educated discussions because we all don't have to think the same.
Absolutely.
We all don't have to think the same.
Absolutely. Man. Wow. Okay. I'm going to probably replay this once, like, I have some time, and just make notes, seriously make notes of this, because there's just so much knowledge here, and I'm so happy to share it. I'm very excited to, that we're going to be able to come from a spirit of generosity and be able to share this wealth, and hopefully help other people navigate the spaces that we're coming into in this season. Do you have any takeaways, any references that before we close off and pretty much let this conversation go? Anything that I do want to say, any that you maybe want to, that burning thought you want to leave people?
Well, I do have a few burning thoughts that I want to get out. I think first and foremost, I want to say thank you for inviting me to your platform. I really do feel like representation matters, and it's great to find a place where a person values what you have to say and in encouraging you to contribute. So thank you for allowing me to come on to your show, and I'm really impressed with what you do. And I guess like, yes, and I guess like also, people who know me, I have like a few sayings, especially like in my, in my work. I always say like, excellence is a habit, and also don't operate from a place of lack, but operate from a place of abundance. So I don't know who's out here who needs to hear that, but when you operate at the best version of yourself always, it becomes secondary, and you don't, once you are ready, you don't have to get ready. So, and then also operating from a place of abundance instead of a place of lack. Don't think about the barriers, about all the possibilities. Because when I first was thinking about coming out here to California, I was just like, California's expensive. California, I'll be by myself. But then I had to think about it. If I am coming out there as the director, the money's going to align so I can live out here and be fine. So it's just like, it's about mindset. So I do understand I have my own lived experience, and the viewers have theirs, but I'm just saying this to encourage them, like, this is the perfect time. Whatever you want to do, if you want to go back to school, do it. If you want to pivot into different careers without doing school, do it. If you're ready to be an entrepreneur, do it. The biggest thing is just do it to the best of your ability. Make educated choices and decisions. And I feel like now more than ever, we have the time to do so. So think, reflect, grow. If you feel like you're in a growing season and everything you want is starting to happen, revel in it, reflect in it. Don't be pushing to do the next thing, because that's also a thing. If you feel like you have all the things that you wanted, don't make it seem like the grass is greener on the other side. Enjoy it. You earned it. So I definitely want to say thank you again for allowing me to speak my truth. these are the things that I've experienced as a international educator working in higher education for almost like the last like 10 years. So again, I've worked at different universities from coast to coast. And so I'm really happy I was able to share about my journey, my experience. And I guess like one of the things I did want to share, a lot of my knowledge is like, of course, being on the job, but I do have a lot of stuff that I like to read. I'm always looking at different platforms to read, but I know now more than ever, people like to be on social media. So I also have some social media platforms, not my own, that like literally they gift wrap all the little data points and sets that have to do with diversity and inclusion, has to do with microaggressions, has to do with the presidential election, all wrapped in a nice pretty bow. And for our educators who are out there and want to have like an equitable classroom and want to decolonize their syllabus, because that's a thing, I'll definitely share these resources with Alexa. But with that, I do close. Again, my name is Jasmin Stewart. I barely use social media for like my own content. So if you followed me, you wouldn't see very much.
Yeah. I will make sure that once I do the clips or the previews and put this on the podcast, where do you, to definitely tag you. If, if I know that for most parts, like we do like to throw references out there, and I most likely will, if there is any, you can find them on my site, melaninmiamimami.org. As I'm in the process of rebranding, you can still find my Instagram at Mahogany Honey Podcast. And I know that once I put you on there, but I don't know if you want to make any references to where they can find you, or just like where, or if they can just find you through me too, that's fine. Because I'll tag you.
As I just mentioned, I think I was joking, but I'm serious. Like my social media presence isn't really there. I feel like I'm so old school. It's just like, if you want to reach out to me on LinkedIn or email. So
got it. That's how you find her, guys.
So that's how you can find me. But I'll give those things to Alexa if you're really wanting to connect with me. I'd love to talk with anybody about anything, and positivity and love and light to anyone who's out there. And I hope that you guys have really enjoyed this call, because I've loved talking about it. Higher education is amazing.
And hopefully we will be able to elevate this conversation, and who knows what it'll bring us, what the universe will.
The crazy thing about it is the universe always provides. So someone out here needed to hear this, and I feel like maybe some of this we needed to get off our chest, because I feel like one of the biggest things with you mentioning like burnout, I feel like we pour into so many people, but who's pouring back into us? We're getting all this heavy stuff, but when are we able to have a release? And maybe this was like a healthy way for me to have my release, so I could like curb some of this burnout.
Yeah, and remind us of our purpose and why we even care to do this.